Welcome to the Players of Life podcast with your host, Adrian Hatcher, the podcast where the game of life never stops. We're back with another episode. This episode, we're going to be discussing the Jaylen Brown and Anthony Davis contracts and whether or not players of their caliber deserve the contracts that they got. Since this has been a huge dilemma going on in the NBA because a lot of fans feel as if these certain players are getting way too much money. But we'll dive deeper into it as we go along. If you like what you hear, guys, leave a like, subscribe, and comment on the YouTube channel, as well as leaving us likes and rating us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We truly do appreciate it. And let's get into the episode. So, for the past few weeks throughout free agency and leading up to the next NBA season, players have been earning some pretty lucrative contracts. We have role players that probably have earned more than what people assume they'll bring to the court, but there is an understanding that with the cap going up, the money has to go somewhere. In order for the NBA to thrive as the organization that they are, you have to actually pay players what they are worth. And if a player feels they're worth a supermax or a max contract, the majority of teams are going to either pay that contract or find a way to get value off that player before they have to pay the player. Now, in the cases of a Jaylen Brown, recently Jaylen Brown earned a 5-year, $304 million supermax contract extension for the Boston Celtics. Now, as any fan, we are going to pocket watch because we love the NBA and we also want to see how much these people are actually making. Now, is it fair to NBA players? Probably not, considering that NBA players are just doing their jobs. They've worked their entire career to get to a point where they can earn this type of money in this short amount of time. Now, in the case of Jaylen Brown, a lot of people wouldn't consider him the best player on the Boston Celtics. That would be Jason Tatum. And considering Jason Tatum hasn't earned a contract as big as this, and also the fact that ESPN and all these other sites are saying it was the richest deal in NBA history up to that point, we have to consider that Jaylen Brown deserves this contract. A lot of people would say Jaylen Brown is just a great second tier player. He's a great number two. And being a number two, you don't get a contract like this as a number two. Now, let's look at this though. The NBA landscape has changed. The cap has changed in terms of how much money you can pay a player. The production has changed every single year. Players are asked to do more. Players are asked to be two-way players. Players are asked to give up more of their time and energy and their life towards the game in order to keep the level that they've been playing. And also, let's go back and consider what we said before about how a player in the NBA doesn't have a long amount of time to do this. So a player that dedicates his life to the game, but also knows he's not going to be here as long as a 9-to-5 or as long as a job that really has a long-term plan, more than 10, maybe 15 years, if you're lucky. Jaylen Brown went and he got the contract that I truly believed he deserved. Now, you may not think he's the best player on the team. I personally don't know or really care if he is the best player on the team between him and Jaylen Brown. Him and Jason Tatum. I truly feel like both players are just as talented. You have to keep those two together in order to keep a championship core. And if you don't keep them together, then you would have to trade Jaylen Brown. And I know that the Boston Celtics are looking at that road and not considering it at all. Why? Because they've been to the conference finals and they've been to the actual NBA finals multiple times at this point. They have reached the precipice. They have gotten to the point where they are only a handful of games away from actually winning an NBA championship. You don't split up teams that have that amount of games under their belt and that amount of chemistry, especially when two of your best players are high-level two-way players that can pretty much do it all on the court. So for those that are saying Jaylen Brown doesn't deserve this contract, I think you're watching the wrong sport. And honestly, kudos to him and his agent for making it happen. He's also talked about how he wants to bring back Black Wall Street. I think that is also a great thing to hear, but that is left to be said. All we really care about at this point is get your money, young man, and go play some great basketball and hopefully win a championship. Now, on the other side of this, pretty much the same argument, just with a different player and different circumstances. Anthony Davis also recently got a new contract. Now, his contract's a little bit different, though. His contract was about a 3-year, $186 million contract extension, and that is pretty much a standard star NBA contract. I'm not sure. I didn't look into whether he had a player option or whether or not he had any incentives. I'm pretty sure he had incentives that will probably push that 186 to around the $200 million range, depending on how well he produces, certain stimulations, and of course winning an NBA championship, all-star games, all that. But Anthony Davis, 3-year, 186, great. Anthony Davis, we've heard his name plenty of times. We know who he is. We know he's the star for the Lakers. Him and LeBron James, they are doing what they got to do as a duo to basically win an NBA championship. Now, the problem people have with Anthony Davis, though, is that he necessarily has been injured for majority of the time that he's been with the Lakers. I'm not sure how many games have been offset, but some would say he's been injured more than he's actually played. And the one championship he did get was in the bubble. And people seem to discredit the bubble. Now, I'm not sure why people discredit the bubble. At the end of the day, it was still NBA high-level basketball. And even though the fans weren't there, I'm pretty sure NBA players don't need the fans in order to win a championship necessarily. The bubble just presented an opportunity for them. So let's give them their kudos. I feel like too much of an issue with the contract necessarily. In this situation, though, they had an issue with the length of the contract and what basically he would do during that contract. Now, Anthony Davis has had issues with staying healthy, of course, throughout an NBA season. And many people view the contract as being a way of securing a player that won't fulfill it the way that they believe needs to be fulfilled to earn that money. So in Jaylen Brown's case, it was about him not being the best player but getting paid so much. But in Anthony Davis's case, it's about a player that they don't feel can truly fulfill the amount of time on that contract due to previous injury history. Now, Anthony Davis being the superstar he is, I don't feel like you can necessarily control injuries. They are part of the sport. It is not an enjoyable part, but at the end of the day, they happen. They happen to the best players. Injuries are just as important as a player that prepares throughout an off season. Why? Because it truly affects how many games you win, and it can affect critical games. And a player being out on the floor, that depends. It really depends on how you're going to win a game. So with Anthony Davis's case, I feel like his contract is much earned. I just truly feel like an NBA player has dedicated their entire lives to this game. They deserve any amount of money that an owner is willing to give them, and that any amount of money they feel is worth. If you were in the game, and whether you're in the game or not, we all feel like we're worth a certain type of money. Truly deep down, we know if we put in the work and the effort, we feel like this is our value. And the owners are just putting a number on it. And they've been putting a number on it since the NBA was created. And as it's gone, and as the cap has increased, and as sports in general has become more popular, as fans have become to spend more money and they go to these games, and players develop more and they go more into the media space. All of this has a trickle effect that is affecting how these players are making money. And players want to make money as long as possible because, like I said with the Jaylen Brown situation, you're not going to be in this game for the long haul. This is honestly no more than a 10 to 15 year run for most players. And the players that go beyond that are players that have either defined their role and they are playing a role that they fit in and they don't have to do more than that role, or they're stars that are still trying to obtain that elusive championship and that elusive legacy. So does Jaylen Brown deserve this contract? Yes. Does Anthony Davis deserve this contract? Yes. So should the discussion be about their contract, or should the discussion be about whether or not these players are going to keep earning money like this? Because honestly, if the players are going to keep earning money like this, we should be congratulating them. Any player that puts the time in and that shows the results deserves the contract that they get. We can't pocket watch players for doing what they do on their job. Now, you may feel as a fan that players aren't as dedicated as they should be if they're making millions of dollars like this. But who are we to say that a player has done enough to earn a contract? Jaylen Brown just got a 5-year, $304 million contract. Let's really put an idea on this. He is part of a 1% of athletes and human beings that are making more money than majority of us will ever see in our lifetime, right? That player, for those 5 years, has created and structured a contract to abide by, to say that I'm going to produce this amount, I'm going to show up for this amount of events, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and on the road to winning a championship, if I win it, I want more money, because the owners are the ones who are the true businessmen. They're the ones that are basically using the players' time and energy and resources to make more money. Now let's get one thing straight, which is something I also wanted to dive into because I feel like it affects how an NBA contract is structured nowadays. NBA owners are making money whether or not their team is successful. Their team being successful, of course, will increase the amount of money they make throughout an NBA season. Because if a player or a team gets further into the playoffs, that means more money is being shelled out to go to these games, more lucrative deals, bigger exposure. And these businessmen, these owners, they understand that. But please do not be confused. When an NBA owner has a team, whether or not they are good or not, they are making money. They are making money off the arena. They are making money off each player. They are getting their just due back. So as a businessman, what are the best ways to keep your resources in line? What are the best ways to make sure the production stays? By paying the players what they feel like they should be paid. Now, Jaylen Brown, you may say, doesn't deserve a $304 million contract. But has an owner ever played a day of basketball? And even though they're not making this type of money off of basketball, do they deserve the money that they get off the players? I mean, it is a business at the end of the day. They basically create a contract, structure a contract to keep a player on the team. They don't play any of the game. They may supply the necessary resources. They may supply the necessary advancement to a player's career, but they're not playing at any point. They get to sit and watch these games. They get to sit and watch the product that they're pouring this money into. It's an investment, and as an investment, these players have to produce. Otherwise, they won't get the type of contracts that they've been getting. And Jaylen Brown and Anthony Davis, even though some would say they haven't produced to that level, others would say yes. And the people that are paying them are saying, yes, you have produced enough for me to pay you this. And that is what truly matters. They are the ones that truly control how a player is looked at, their value, how their deal is going to be structured. The players are trying to get more power. They're trying to be able to determine where they go, how much money they make. Why? Because at the end of the day, they still have a job to do. It may not be a 9 to 5, but guaranteed that job needs to be fulfilled in order for those paychecks to keep coming. That contract is very specific on what those players have to do. We never played in the NBA, so we don't know what they honestly have to do. We see them when they want to be seen and when the media dictates that they have to be seen. But into their private lives, we don't know. We truly don't. The money is just being shelled out. And that money is being reinvested over and over and over again. And this won't be the last time that we see an NBA player gain a contract that we think is crazy, or that some will think or say that they don't deserve it. So I say to you guys, if you think a player doesn't deserve it, then look at the overall pie and ask yourself, are you truly believe that these players don't deserve the money they get when they dedicate their lives into something, when you dedicate your life into a job? Why are we the ones that determine their value? You know, yes, Anthony Davis does get injured. That doesn't matter to us. He's still, when he is healthy, he is still one of the best players in this game, and he will continue to be. Is Jaylen Brown the best player on the Boston Celtics? For some he is, for some he isn't. But you know what he is though? He is a go-to player. He does play defense. He can get a bucket. He can run a team. If called to be on, he can be the best player on a championship team if he wanted to. So how are we to say whether or not the money that he's getting is well deserved? I don't feel like that's really the argument here, because at the end of the day, any player deserves whatever they can negotiate. So with that being said, thank you for listening, guys. If you like what you hear, just like and subscribe on the YouTube channel, as well as following us on Apple and Spotify, and leaving your support and any reviews about the show. If you want to see something different or hear something different, just let me know. Leave a comment, leave a review. With that being said, guys, y'all have a great day. Peace.